Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. I'm your host, Golu. Today, we're stepping far, far away from the comforts of human civilization and heading straight into the wilds. I want you to just imagine for a second the hushed, reverent silence of a deep forest, or the vast, completely uncompromising open plains. Out there, staying alive isn't just a matter of luck. It's a literal masterclass in ingenious biological engineering. So today, we're going on a journey through the absolutely incredible ways animals manage to stay alive. Right off the bat, let's kick things off with a bit of a puzzle. What on earth links a perfectly silent owl slicing through the night sky to a cheetah just exploding across the savannah at over 100 kilometers an hour? Well, survival in the wild isn't just about raw, unadulterated power. It's really about hyper-specialized adaptation. And that puzzle brilliantly illustrates the path we're taking today. You see, survival in the natural world operates on an escalating spectrum. Think of it kind of like a set of biological Russian nesting dolls. We're going to start at the micro level, looking really closely at the physical adaptations of individual predators, and then we're going to scale all the way up to the macro level, exploring the sprawling, interconnected mechanics of entire ecosystems. Okay, let's dive right in. Section 1. Built for the hunt. There is honestly no better example of individual physiological extremes than the cheetah. It's basically a biological sports car. To put this in perspective, a cheetah's thigh muscles are 50% heavier than what you'd expect for a typical mammal of its size. And get this, in its hind limbs, just over half, 50.1% to be exact, of the muscle is made up of type 2X fast-twitch fibers. Those are built specifically for explosive, immediate power. But to hit sprinting speeds of 93 to 104 kilometers an hour, the cheetah has to make a massive trade-off. They literally sacrifice stamina for raw acceleration. That is exactly why their oxygen processing mitochondrial volume is exceptionally low, sitting at just 3.7%. And the engineering definitely doesn't stop at the legs. You know, a lot of people think a cheetah's tail acts as a counterbalance. Actually, scratch that. At only 2% of their total body mass, it is way too light for that. Instead, it functions as a high-speed aerodynamic rudder. The thick fur on the tail actually increases aerodynamic drag by a whopping 40%. So when the cheetah is doing those rapid, high-speed zigzags to catch an antelope, that tail performs rotational movements reaching 90-degree angles. Combine that with a remarkably long, flexible spine, making up 67% of its trunk length, and you've got an animal that can change direction in a split second. So how does all this intense engineering come together in the real world? Let's walk through the anatomy of a hunt. First, they use cover to stalk within about 30 to 200 meters of their target. Then comes the explosion, a sprint that is incredibly taxing on their body, lasting an average of just 37.9 seconds. While they're at top speed, they use this sharp, non-retractable dew claw on their front paw to hook and trip the prey. Finally, finishing the hunt requires a 689-Newton throat bite, held for about 5 minutes to suffocate the animal. And here is the real kicker. Cheetahs are constantly bullied by larger predators, like lions and hyenas. Because of that, they've adapted specialized, blade-like carnassial teeth so they can slice and swallow meat incredibly fast right before their hard-earned meal gets stolen. It's a literal race from start to finish. Section 2. The silent flight. Now, if the cheetah is the ultimate expression of explosive terrestrial speed, the owl is without a doubt the absolute master of stealth. Usually, bird wings generate a ton of acoustic noise, mostly from the hard trailing edge of the feathers aggressively cutting through the air. But the owl wing is completely different. It possesses 3 highly specific features that work together to totally eliminate aerodynamic noise, which lets them hunt completely undetected. Let's break down these acoustic stealth attributes. First up, there's a comb of stiff feathers along the leading edge that essentially smooths out the air. Second, you have a flexible, porous fringe at the trailing edge that breaks up sound waves. And third, this is my favorite, there's a velvety, forest-like down sitting right on top of the wing. Think of that velvety down like a super soft, thick carpet that literally absorbs and eliminates sound at its very source. This adaptation is so incredibly perfect that human scientists are studying the geometry of owl feathers right now to design quieter wind turbines and even stealthier submarines. Nature perfected this technology millions of years before we even had the idea. Moving on to Section 3, Extreme Social Survival. All right, let's zoom out from the individual animal for a minute. What happens when survival doesn't depend on how fast or how silent you are, but relies entirely on the massive power of the collective? Welcome to eusociality.
Often referred to as true sociality, this is a bizarre biological system where individuals make the ultimate evolutionary sacrifice. They actually give up their own ability to reproduce, remaining totally sterile, just so they can work to further the reproductive success of others, which is usually a single queen. We see this wild dynamic in termites, certain marine sponge-dwelling shrimp, and famously, the naked mole rat.
To truly be considered eusocial, a species has to meet 4 incredibly strict criteria. First, you need overlapping generations living together in one colony. Second, cooperative brood care, which means non-parents are the ones out there gathering food and protecting the young. Third is philopatry, individuals stay in the exact nests where they were born. And fourth, you need that reproductive altruism where workers stay sterile. And maintaining this intense social order, it can be surprisingly physical. Take naked mole rat colonies, for example. The queen will literally shove the sterile workers around the tunnels, head to head, just to physically enforce her behavioral dominance and keep everyone working.
So you're probably wondering, how does something this complex and honestly kind of counterintuitive even evolve? Let's look at Nolok's 5 steps of evolution. It all starts with the formation of groups living tightly together in structured nests. Then, pre-adaptations pop up, like progressively bringing food back to the young over time. Next comes the really interesting part, genetic mutations. For instance, genes that would normally encourage an insect to disperse and leave the nest, those might get completely silenced. Natural selection then acts on these emergent group traits. And finally, multi-level selection takes over, where these highly cooperative groups just flat out outcompete solitary ones. It's fascinating because very specific conditions pave the way for this. Lifetime monogamy, where a queen mates once so all the siblings share a massive amount of DNA, or even termites depending on each other to literally share gut bacteria so they can digest wood. These are the perfect launch pads for this extreme sociality.
Section 4, the Great Migration. Okay, we are leaving the insect colony behind and zooming way out to the sprawling plains of the Serengeti to witness movement at an almost unimaginable scale. Look at this number, 2 million. That is the staggering number of ungulates, mostly wildebeest, but also hundreds of thousands of zebras and gazelles, all participating in an epic 800-kilometer trek. They are entirely driven by seasonal rainfall and the constant, desperate search for nutritious short grasses. This journey is a massive clockwise race for life. From December to April, the herds are down in the Ndudu Plains, where a mind-blowing 500,000 babies are born in just a few short weeks, basically overwhelming predators with sheer numbers. Then, by May to July, the dry season pushes them toward the western corridor, forcing them to cross the Grumeti River. In August and September, that's when they face the absolutely terrifying Mara River crossing into Kenya, navigating waters filled with massive, wading crocodiles. Finally, in October and November, they return south via the Lobo area to start the whole cycle again. And shadowing them every single step of the way is Africa's largest lion population, always waiting in ambush. It truly is survival measured in constant motion. And finally, Section 5, the apex effect. When you step back and look at these massive migrations and sprawling landscapes, you have to ask, who is actually orchestrating and balancing these ecosystems? Well, the answer lies at the very top of the food chain with something called trophic cascades. This is an ecological phenomenon where the influence of apex predators literally flows all the way down the food web. You see, apex predators don't just kill prey, they act as vital ecological engineers. Just by existing, they create what's known as a landscape of fear. This alters exactly how and where prey animals choose to feed and move, which in turn fundamentally alters plant regeneration and, believe it or not, can even change the physical geography of the environment itself. The stakes of this balance are absolutely huge. With apex predators around, you get a self-regulating ecosystem. Vegetation actually gets a chance to regenerate, disease is kept in check because predators usually pick off the weak, and overall populations remain stable. But without them, you get rampant overgrazing, complete habitat collapse, and a phenomenon called mesopredator release. A perfect historical example of this is Australia. When the apex Tasmanian tiger went extinct and dingo populations seriously declined, invasive mid-level predators, these mesopredators like foxes and feral cats, absolutely exploded in number, and they completely devastated the native marsupial populations, all because that top-down control was just gone. And there is honestly no better, more magical proof of this concept than the Yellowstone wolf reintroduction. When wolves were finally brought back to Yellowstone National Park after a 70-year absence,
the entire landscape transformed. The elk, now fearing the wolves, altered their feeding patterns and completely stopped overgrazing the valleys and the riverbanks. Because of that one behavioral shift, willow and aspen trees freely regenerated. That new tree growth suddenly improved habitats for beavers and songbirds. And incredibly, the roots of those returning trees physically stabilized the riverbanks, greatly reducing erosion and actually changing the physical shape and course of the rivers. Think about that. Reintroducing a single predator species literally revived a failing ecosystem.
So, as we wrap up today's explainer, traversing all the way from the micro adaptations of a cheetah's muscle fibers to the macro impact of wolves physically shaping rivers, I want to leave you with a thought. If the survival of entire landscapes depends on these invisible, super delicate threads connecting silent owls, sprinting cheetahs, and apex wolves, where does humanity fit into this biological web? Our role in preserving these cascading survival systems is absolutely more crucial than ever. I really hope this deep dive gave you a new appreciation for the incredible engineering of the wild. Keep learning, keep questioning the world around you, and I will see you on the next explainer.